before the story begins, hit that like button and subscribe. Here, the horror is real. Let's go! I never cared much for ghost stories. To be honest, I used to laugh at them. The road to me was always something real, tangible, honest. You know where you came from, where you're going, how much gas you've got and how long you can last. I liked that. I liked the clarity. But what happened to me that night shattered that clarity, quietly, without a crash, just with a look and a slow wave. It was October 2020. I was driving a night route from Ulm to Freiburg. Nothing special, just a basic load of construction steel. I'd done that route dozens of times, but this time I had to take a detour. Part of the A8 was closed for construction, so I took a side road. Narrow, winding, barely lit. I didn't know it well, but I had good headlights and plenty of time. It was just past 2 a.m. The road was empty. No cars ahead, none behind. I had the window cracked open. I like the cold night air, keeps me alert. Radio off, phone in the holder, everything calm. Just the hum of the engine and the soft hiss of the tires. And then I saw her, on the right shoulder a few meters ahead. A woman, standing there almost completely still, wearing a light-colored dress that seemed to glow in my headlights. And she was waving, slowly. Not panicked, not frantic, just a calm, rhythmic motion, like she was saying, "Come." I tapped the brakes. Not hard, just enough to slow down. I was nearly alongside her when I flipped on the hazard lights and pulled over. I figured it could be anything. Accident, breakdown, maybe she needed help. No cell reception out there, so I'd probably have to give her a ride. No big deal, I've picked up people before when it made sense. But when I came to a stop and looked out the window, she was gone. Completely gone. I opened the door, stepped out, flashlight in hand, scanned the bushes along the road. No footprints, no sound. Not even a rustle. The road was so quiet I could hear myself breathing. I walked a few steps back, looked around, even called out, softly, "Hello? Everything okay?" Nothing. And suddenly I felt displaced. Not scared, not watched. Just out of place, like I had stepped into a scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I got back in the truck and shook my head. Probably just a trick of the light. Fatigue. Could have been a reflective object. A piece of trash, a tree stump. Your brain sees faces in all kinds of things. That's what I told myself. I needed to keep going. I pulled back onto the road. 10 minutes later, there she was again. This time I saw her sooner. Same woman, about 100 meters ahead, standing perfectly still at the edge of the road. Same pale dress, same slow wave. My heart was pounding. I didn't stop, I kept driving. Slower but steady. I caught her in my peripheral vision as I passed. She turned her head, watched my truck. No smile, no emotion, just watching. I sped up, turned the radio on, some dumb pop song, I didn't care. I needed noise. Anything to drown out my thoughts. I don't remember exactly how much time passed. 15 minutes, maybe more. I was back on a straightaway heading uphill, almost calm again. Almost. Until I saw her a third time. This time, she was in the middle of the road, standing there. No more than 50 meters ahead. I hit the brakes. Hard enough to slow down, not to stop, swerved to the left and past her, caught a glimpse of her face. She tilted her head slightly, no wave this time, just a nod, like she knew something. I didn't stop again. I kept driving, got off that curse back road and onto the B31. Streetlights again, other cars. The world started to make sense again. I drove until I reached a gas station, got out, had a coffee, took a deep breath. When I opened the truck door again, there it was. A small note. On the dashboard, white paper, blue ink, neatly written, 3 words. "You did right. I swear to you. I was alone. The doors were locked. No one had been there. And yet..." That note. I took it, folded it, put it in my wallet, and it's still there to this day. I tucked the note into my wallet and kept driving, but somehow nothing felt the same. Not the road, not the engine, not even the steering wheel in my hands. Everything felt off, slightly shifted, like waking from a dream you're not entirely out of yet. I dropped off the delivery, said nothing, just a few nods, yeah, all good here and there. I didn't want to talk, I had no words for what happened, but I knew I wasn't crazy. I had seen her 3 times, and the note was real. I still have it. I look at it sometimes, just to make sure I didn't dream the whole thing. The next day on my way back, I purposely took a different route, avoided the back road, drove 20 minutes out of the way, more traffic, more lights, more life. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. I had the radio on, news was playing, the usual chaos, pandemic numbers, politics, the economy. I barely listened, but then a name caught my attention. Tuttlingen district, the announcer said. Then another hit and run reported. Police asked for witnesses. I sat up straight. I was passing an exit that would have taken me right there. I knew that area, and then, without really knowing why, I took the exit. I told myself I needed fuel. That was a lie. I needed to go back. I drove to a gas station and casually asked about the accident. The cashier, a young guy with dark circles under his eyes, just said, "Yeah, there was another one last week. Same stretch again. Always at night. No one wants to drive there anymore." "What stretch?" I asked. "The old L529 between Immendingen and Möhringen. Barely any traffic. They say something's out there." He grinned, trying to play it cool, but I saw it in his eyes. He believed it, or feared it. I went there, not because I was brave, not even out of curiosity, but because I felt like I owed something. To the woman, to myself, to the road. It was night again. The streetlights ended early. I drove slow, window cracked, same damn cold as before. The fog hung low. And then, without warning, that feeling, as if someone was sitting beside me. I turned my head. No one there. Of course not. But the presence stayed. I reached into my jacket and felt the note. Still there. Ink slightly smudged, but still readable. "You did right." I kept driving. Slowly, then up ahead. Light. Not my headlights. Something on the road. I eased onto the brakes and coasted forward. An accident scene. 2 police cruisers. An ambulance. No flashing lights. Just parking beams I drove past. Slow. And then I saw her. The woman, standing on the grassy shoulder, next to the guardrail, same dress, same posture, and again that slow wave. No begging, no calling, just persistence. I didn't stop, I kept going, heart pounding, palms sweaty. I checked the rearview mirror, and this time, she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a man, dressed in dark clothes. He didn't look at me, just stood there. I got off the road, back onto the highway, pulled into a rest stop and sat there, breathing, long, deep breaths, and then I saw it. On the passenger seat, a new note, smaller than the first. Same handwriting, same blue ink. "She wasn't meant for you." I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. Quietly, something in me felt lighter. Maybe because I knew I hadn't done the wrong thing. Maybe because I realized I had made it through something without being torn apart. I drove home, and since then, I've never taken that road again. But sometimes, when I'm alone on the highway, radio hissing and the fog swallowing the asphalt, I see her again, in the corner of my eye, far in the distance, and I know, if I ever stop again, it might not be her anymore. A few months have passed since I saw her, or him, or whatever that was. I still drive trucks, almost every day, but I avoid that stretch of road. I know all the detours by heart now. I don't even need to put them in the GPS anymore. I haven't really told anyone what happened. Not properly. I once vaguely mentioned to a colleague that something weird happened to me on the L529. He just laughed and said, "Oh, that old story about the woman on the shoulder? Yeah, my grandpa used to talk about that one." I asked him what exactly he meant. He shrugged. "Some hitchhiker who disappears. Urban legend stuff." I laughed with him, but deep down, I knew it wasn't a myth. What I saw was too clear, too real, too specific. And the note, I still have it. Both of them. I keep them in a plastic sleeve in my glove box. Sometimes when I sleep in the cab, I take them out. Not because I'm scared, but because I want to remember. Because it's easy to forget, you know? The road is long, monotonous. You get used to the asphalt, the hum of the engine, the dark. You forget that there are places where reality bends, where the air smells different, where you're not alone, even if it looks like you are. Some nights, I feel it again. I drive for hours through fog, through rain, through dim light. And sometimes, faintly, I hear a tapping sound. Not loud, not threatening, just there, like a ticking in the air. I turn the radio up, talk to myself, drink coffee, anything to not listen too closely. But eventually, the moment always comes, the glance into the rearview mirror. And then, I see it. Not her, never directly, just the feeling. A shadow on the back seat, a shape that doesn't belong there. And one thought I can't shake. This time, it might be meant for me. I never stop. I've learned. I know how it works now, but I keep wondering, what happens to the ones who don't? A few weeks ago, I saw flashing lights on the opposite side of the highway. An accident. A truck had crashed into the guardrail. Driver dead. No skid marks. No other vehicle involved. The news said they didn't know why, but I did. I passed that spot late at night, slower than usual. I didn't see the woman, no waving, no light. Just a piece of guardrail newly replaced, still shiny under my headlights. And on the ground, something white. I didn't stop, but I saw it. A scrap of paper, too small to read, too precise to be a coincidence. I don't know how long this has been happening. Maybe for years, maybe decades. Maybe there's never been a time when she wasn't there. Maybe she's part of the road now, or what's behind it, something that waves, not to ask for help, but to see if you understand. I ask myself often, what would have happened if I'd stopped the first time, if I had gotten out, if I had accepted the invitation, would I have disappeared too? Or would I be standing there now, in white, on the side of the road, waiting? Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat for no reason. I check my phone, 2:53 a.m., always just before she used to appear. I lie there in the dark, listening, and I wonder, did she forget me? Or was that only the beginning? I do most of my driving at night, not because I have to, because I prefer it. Less traffic, cooler air, fewer distractions. I've been hauling freight across Germany for over 10 years, and over time you get used to the darkness, the static-filled radio, the endless rhythm of the road. It was fall of 2019, somewhere between Leipzig and Dresden. I was on my way back from a delivery and planned to push through to Chemnitz. A little past 1 a.m., the highway was empty, no taillights ahead, no headlights behind. I cruised at a comfortable pace, soft jazz playing on the radio, half a bottle of water riding shotgun. And then I saw the sign, Rest Stop, 1 km. I remember it clearly because I was surprised. I knew this stretch of road well, and I was sure there wasn't a rest stop there, not at that spot, but I figured maybe it was new or temporary. I was tired, the tank was half full, and I could really go for coffee and something warm, so I pulled off. The exit ramp was narrow, barely lit, no other cars, no trucks. The road wound briefly through a patch of trees, then opened into a small parking area. Clean, quiet, 2 fuel pumps, a rectangular building with a glowing sign above the door, Fuel and Food 24H. I shut off the engine. Everything was silent. No music, no voices, just the faint buzzing of fluorescent lights. I got out and filled up. The nozzle clicked as the tank topped off. Then I went inside. It was surprisingly warm. A narrow shop area with shelves stocked with the usual things, chips, candy, canned beer. Beyond that, a small counter, and past that, a dining section. 6 tables, checker tablecloths, a buffet with steaming hot dishes. I smelled coffee. And something else, an odd mix of cooked meat and incense. Weird but not unpleasant. Behind the counter stood a woman, maybe in her early 50s. Dark hair pulled back, plain clothes. She looked at me and smiled, but said nothing. I nodded, made my way to the dining area. I grabbed a plate, helped myself to some goulash, potatoes, a slice of bread, sat down at a table, no music, no customers. I ate slowly, the weariness settling deep into my bones. It was almost cozy, almost too quiet. After finishing, I returned to the counter. The woman was still there, barely moved. "Can I pay, please?" I asked. She looked at me, smiled, and nodded. "That's it." I waited a moment, took out my wallet. "How much?" I asked. Another nod. Slow. Her eyes locked on mine. Not uncomfortable, but also not normal. I held out a 20. She didn't raise her hand, just kept smiling. I placed the bill on the counter, gave her a nod. "Thank you. Have a nice night," I said quietly. No response. I walked out, climbed back into the truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched the building shrink, then vanish behind the trees. I drove for another hour or so, eventually stopping at a regular service area just before Chemnitz. I slept in the cab. Morning came, grey and damp. I brewed some coffee on my little gas stove and thought about the night before. Then something hit me. No receipt, no transaction, no name of the rest stop, nothing. I checked my GPS, no marker, tried entering the location manually, nothing, no exit, no rest stop. Later, I drove the same route again, slower, searching for the sign, for the turn-off, nothing, no patch of woods, no lights, no fuel and food 24/8, just a plain stretch of highway, asphalt, guardrails, trees, like always. But I know I was there. I remember the taste of the goulash, the soft hum of the lights, the woman's eyes, and I remember her smile. But something was missing. There was no reflection in her eyes, only darkness. I know how it sounds. A rest stop that vanished. A silent woman, no receipt, no road back. But I was there, and I couldn't let it go. In the days that followed, I didn't tell anyone. How could I? I could barely believe it myself. And still, every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sign, fuel and food, 24A, glowing alone in the darkness. And the woman behind the counter, silent, smiling, with those pitch-black eyes that reflected nothing. 2 weeks later, I took that route again, deliberately. I planned my route so I'd be passing that spot around midnight. I drove slowly. No GPS, no music. I focused entirely on the road. Every sign, every possible turn-off. But it was like the asphalt had changed. No sign, no ramp, no lights. I drove up and down that stretch, parked at rest areas, compared maps. Later I showed a coworker a photo I had taken of the note I left in my cab that night, where I had marked the location. He frowned. "There's nothing there. Never was. Trust me, I've been driving that route for 20 years. I didn't give up. I started digging through old maps online, scoured forums, asked around anonymously in trucker communities. I posted, "Anyone know a rest stop between Leipzig and Dresden? Small, open 24 hours, Buffett-style food. Sign might have said fuel and food. Neon lights, maybe near the old B1M3. Only one user replied. Just one. His comment, "You saw it? If you ever see it again, don't stop." I wrote back. No answer. 2 days later, his account was deleted. I started doubting. Not what I saw, never that. But everything else. Why me? Why there? And why that nod? I kept remembering the woman. That smile. It wasn't kind, it was knowing. As if she knew something about me that I'd forgotten myself. A few nights later, I woke up drenched in sweat. No reason. I was in my apartment, 3rd floor of an old building in Chemnitz. I rarely stayed there, but that night I'd cancelled a trip due to weather. And then I smelled it. Goulash, clear as day, fresh. Pepper, bay leaf, that heavy scent of boiled fat. I got up, stumbled through the dark, turned on the kitchen light. Nothing. But the smell was there, in the hallway, in my bedroom. I opened windows. Didn't help, it took hours to fade. Or maybe I just got used to it. The next day I found a note in my mailbox. No return address. White paper, folded, no envelope. I opened it. One sentence. The way back isn't traveled on wheels. I could barely breathe. The note was identical to the one from the rest stop. Same paper, same handwriting, same ink. I still had the original stored in a plastic sleeve in my glove box. I compared them. They were identical. I didn't call the police. I knew it wouldn't help. It wasn't a crime, no break-in, no proof, just a message. I decided to stop searching. I kept doing my routes. I didn't speak about it. But I started a small notebook. I wrote down everything. The smell, the note, the rest stop, the woman, the food. I even drew the layout of the diner as best I could remember it. And then, weeks later, I got a call. Unknown number. I picked up. Silence, then a voice. Soft, old, barely a whisper. "You ate, that's enough." I said nothing. I couldn't. Then, click. Call ended. I rushed to my notebook, flipping through the pages, and on the back of one sketch, where I'd never written anything, there was a new sentence. "We remember every plate." I hadn't written that, but the ink was the same as the note, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept driving. Weeks turned into months, mile after mile, and even though I never saw that rest stop again, I felt like it never truly left me. I knew I wasn't crazy. I had seen too much, heard too much, and it started creeping into the little things. My dreams changed. Not chaotic or weird like usual, no, structured, always the same sequence. I was driving through an endless night. No signs, no traffic, just me. And then, the light, soft yellowish, diffused like through fog. I turned off, got out, and there she was. The woman, always the same posture, the same smile, and that quiet, knowing nod, like she'd been waiting for me. But I knew, in those dreams, I wasn't quite myself. I wasn't a driver, not a visitor. I was a guest. And guests don't always pay with money. Once, in half sleep, I heard a voice right next to my ear. Not loud, just a breath. "You made room. Now you won't return empty." I jolted awake. All windows closed, door locked, engine off. But on the passenger seat, something was there, a plastic spoon, the same kind I'd used to eat the goulash that night. I stared at it, didn't touch it. Later, I put it in a small box and hid it in the glove compartment, like a trophy or evidence. But I knew this wasn't a sign from outside. It was an echo. I didn't tell anyone, not because I feared being laughed at, but because I knew those who haven't been there would never understand. And those who have don't speak anymore. But then came the moment I finally understood what that woman had truly done. It was a night in December. I was driving through heavy snow near the Czech border. No rest stops for miles. Visibility low, ice on the road. I drove slowly, focused, and then I saw it. A faint yellow glow filtering through the trees. My heart froze. I knew that light. I hit the brakes, gently, and there it was. At the edge of the forest, barely visible, the rest stop, but this time, no sign, no fuel and food. Just the building, quieter than ever, and me knowing I couldn't turn off. Not again. I drove past, straight ahead, didn't even glance sideways. Later, when I pulled over at a regular gas station, my hands were shaking, and on the seat beside me, without me noticing, lay a new note. Correct. But it gets harder the more you see. I was done, not mentally, I still worked, still functioned, but emotionally. I'd lost the sense that I could ever fully leave it behind. The road had become a line that moved, but didn't really lead anywhere. I had eaten, I had sat down, I had met her eyes, and I knew I'd taken something with me, or something had taken me. Since then, every glowing rest stop is a test, every pause a trial. I avoid buffets, I eat only from cans, drink coffee from thermoses. I don't stop if the place isn't listed, not if it's too quiet, not if it's too empty. I wonder how many of us are out there, driving through the same night, with memories that don't show up on any map, with trails that can't be tracked by GPS. Sometimes, rarely, you hear someone on CB radio say something strange. A sentence like, "Hey, does that old fuel and food still exist?" And then silence, always silence. I never answer, because if you're asking, you've already seen too much, and I've seen enough. But if you ever find yourself somewhere between Leipzig and Dresden, and you see a sign that doesn't appear on your GPS, and the light is soft, and the road feels like it's pulling you, and you're so tired, then keep driving, don't eat, don't speak, and above all, if she smiles at you, don't nod back. I've been driving trucks for over 30 years, and believe me, I've seen it all. Snow, hail, wrecks, traffic jams stretching beyond the horizon. I've slept at rest stops where you'd be better off not peeking through the curtains, and I've taken routes no GPS would ever suggest on purpose. I'm not a dreamer, not superstitious. I believe in engines, diesel prices, and working brakes. But what I experienced in late summer 2018 changed the way I see the world. Not with a bang, with a whisper, with static. It was a routine trip through central Hesse. I was on a route I knew well, between Gießen and Bad Hersfeld, taking the back roads again because the Autobahn was jammed, as usual. I had a medium-sized container hitched up, nothing heavy. The weather was calm, sky overcast, that pale, greyish light you get before dusk. I remember feeling relaxed. Music was playing. Soft rock, not too loud. The radio's old but reliable. No Bluetooth junk, just good old FM and a solid set of speakers. And then the static hit. Suddenly. Not a slow fade, not a glitch, just there. The music cut out abruptly and was replaced by a wall of white noise, harsh, cold, like needles in my ears. I reached for the dial, tried changing the station. Nothing. Just the same piercing static. I turned the radio off. But the sound kept going. And now it wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from inside the dashboard. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Believe me, I thought it was just some weird electrical feedback, maybe a loose wire. I knocked on the plastic, cut the engine, started it again. The static was still there. And then the voices started, faint, like they were buried far away, lost in the static, but real, not loud, not clear. But enough for me to make out that it wasn't modern language. It was German, yes, but not today's German. It sounded old, rough, like someone from another century was trying to say something to me. I only caught fragments. Advance, turn back, at night, chasseur, chain severed. The voice was male, raspy, like coming through a radio, but not electronic, more like an echo through metal. Hard to explain. I pulled over onto the shoulder, shut everything off. Lights, ignition. Set their hands on the wheel. The static slowly faded, and with it the voices. Exactly 5 minutes later it was silent, just the wind outside, and my own breathing. I sat there for a while, checked the side mirror. Empty road. I was completely alone, lit a cigarette, even though I'd quit. My hands were shaking a little. It wasn't fear, it was confusion. I felt like I tuned into a signal I never meant to find. I kept driving, slower now. At the next rest stop I ran into some fellow drivers. One of them, Klaus, I'd known for years. I told him what happened. Carefully, a lot of maybes and not sure what it was. He listened quietly. Then he looked at me and asked, "Was it on the old B62 right before that forest bend?" I nodded. He took a long sip of his coffee. Then he said, "Happened to me too, years ago. Same sound, same feeling, and I'm not the only one." I asked what he meant, and that's when he told me about the military convoy. Klaus told the story calmly. No suspense, no mystery tone, just that flat, steady voice you use when something's lived inside you too long. 1964, he said. A convoy from Bundeswehr Regiment 36 was returning from a routine training exercise. 8 vehicles, 3 troop carriers, 1 communications truck, a fuel tanker, and 2 jeeps. Nothing unusual, standard movement. I nodded slowly. They took the exact same route you did, the old B62. Back then it was still a main connector road. Just past the bend in the forest, they disappeared. I frowned. "What do you mean, disappeared?" Klaus looked at me for a long moment. then said, "A local reported seeing headlights, bright beams, heavy engine sounds, and then silence. No horn, no radio contact, nothing. Next morning, no tire tracks, no oil, no debris, just gone." I said nothing. It sounded like one of those old campfire stories, but something in his voice told me he wasn't making this up. "And what did the military say?" I asked. "Fog, navigation error, mechanical failure, the usual lines, they blocked off the area, sent search teams, but they found nothing. No bodies, no metal, no radios. Eventually the case was just dropped." He took another sip from his coffee, then said, "But the static, that noise, you and I aren't the only ones who've heard it." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He pulled out an old phone, scrolled for a bit, then handed it to me. A note, rough transcript, fragments, dated 2015, recorded on the same stretch of road. Braking formation, no visibility, no contact, with command, "We proceed." He looked me dead in the eye. I recorded that when it happened to me, and the weird part, always at the same time, just before dusk, always where the road narrows. I felt chills creep down my spine. "What do you think it is?" I asked. Klaus shrugged. "Some say it's an echo, others think it's a piece of reality looping itself. Me? I don't think they're gone. I think they're just somewhere else." I didn't say anything. Later that night I drove in silence. The road ahead was dark, endless. I kept hearing Klaus's words over and over in my head. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about before. While the static was happening, I'd felt the truck slow down, not by my doing, as if something was pulling it back. The needle on the speedometer dipped, even though my foot was steady on the gas, just for 5, maybe 10 seconds. Then everything snapped back to normal. I had forgotten, or maybe I'd pushed it aside, but now it came rushing back. And I asked myself, what if I was almost through? What if I had reacted a moment too soon or too late? I made it home that night, but I didn't sleep. In the days that followed, I started digging, and sure enough, I found brief mentions of an incident in 1964. No real details, just footnotes. A clipping from a regional paper at the time, military exercise disrupted by radio interference, vehicles unaccounted for. No follow-up, no photos. But in a 1971 road renovation report, I found one line. "Section south of Old Forest Bend rerouted due to safety concerns. Cause, structural anomalies in soil readings." Structural anomalies. What the hell does that even mean? I stopped driving the B62 after that. I rerouted every trip. Told dispatch it was because of poor road conditions. No one asked further. But sometimes I hear the static again. Not on the road, at home, on the radio, just for a second, between songs, and a scratch, a pulse, and then a voice, not loud, just a whisper. "Advance completed, return no longer possible." I change the station immediately, tell myself it's just a glitch, random interference, but deep down, I know better. I tuned into something that was never meant for me. I stayed away from the old B62 for a long time, almost a year. I took different routes, different jobs, different times of day. I thought if I just kept my eyes off it long enough, it would disappear. But it didn't, because the static came with me, not every night, not even regularly, but sometimes, out of nowhere, the radio would turn on by itself. Not music, not news, just white static, and always followed by the same voices. Command post, negative. Visual, lost. Hold position. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was a technical glitch, maybe some residual signal from a weather tower, or a trick of the mind. I'm not a young man anymore. Maybe the brain just loops old signals when it gets tired. But then came the night I saw the road again. It wasn't a decision, it wasn't planned, it just happened. I'd accepted a last-minute return job, took the route without thinking, and halfway through I realized it was leading me straight back to the B62. I could have turned back, but I didn't. Maybe because I wanted to know if it was still there. Maybe because deep down I knew I wasn't getting away from it. The night was quiet, no stars, fog hung low across the road. I drove slow, almost reverently. no music, no light except my own headlights. And then, just past the bend, it happened again. The static. Like a pull, it was as if my truck sliced through something invisible. And suddenly I wasn't just driving, I was between the real and whatever's underneath. I could feel it, the weight in the air, the warping of sound. And then the voices, louder now, closer, not whispers, shouts. This is Unit 3, last location, unknown, no response, no horizon. I grabbed the CB radio without thinking. I'd never used it. Nobody does anymore. But I pressed the button. Who's speaking? What is this place? Silence. Then, you hear us? I don't know how I got through it. I just kept driving. The truck vibrated like it was gliding over a different kind of ground. I saw no road anymore, just fog. And then, shapes, silhouettes, vehicles. Old, heavy, camouflaged, parked, still, windows dark. Lights off. I drove through them, slow, and I could feel it. I was being watched, not with eyes, not with faces, but with awareness. Something knew I was there, something noticed me, but it didn't stop me, didn't reach out. Just one thought pulsed in my mind. If you go back, you'll bring it with you. I don't know how long it lasted. Minutes? Hours? Time doesn't move the same in that place. But eventually the asphalt returned. The lane markers, reality. I kept driving until I hit the first lit town, got out, shaking, walked into a gas station, ordered coffee, said nothing. Since then, nothing's been the same. Sometimes I hear radio chatter from devices that are turned off. I see numbers on road signs that weren't there before. I dream of convoys made of silence. And I'm not the only one. Klaus disappeared. I haven't seen him since. His last call came 3 weeks after we spoke. Just one line on my voicemail. I think I'm part of it now. I still drive, because it's all I know. But I keep a CB radio on standby. Always. And when the static returns, I don't answer. Because I know they're still out there, still moving. Not looking for a way back, but for a signal, for connection.